I'm Chris Moyer with Z-Prime. We're at Grid Connects 2018, and I have the pleasure of speaking with the Chief Deputy Director of the California Energy Commission, Courtney Smith. Courtney, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us today.
My pleasure, Chris.
We're here talking about grid modernization. Where do you see the utility industry, and particularly California utilities, tackling the challenges associated with renewable integration over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, Chris, as you alluded to, California has set some extremely ambitious goals when it comes to renewable energy. Just last September, the legislature passed a bill that actually requires the state to supply 60% of its retail sales with renewable energy by 2030. And then we have a goal past that to get to a 100% zero carbon grid by 2045. So this is super ambitious. It's also a continuation of what we've already been doing. So from the utility perspective, we've really tried to send a strong market signal that this is where we're headed. No surprises. Of course, it's going to bring challenges to utilities. A big part of that is, as you alluded to, renewables integration. We're actually already seeing a lot of utilities pursuing energy storage and other integration strategies in order to start to better integrate those intermittent resources. But I think it's important to remember that this is happening on a backdrop of change in the utility space here in California. A big part of that change is retail choice. And we're seeing some of the traditional models of what services are provided by utilities being a bit upended. And so that is really, I think, challenging some of our investor-owned utilities to really think through what is their business model. Transportation electrification is another area of rapid change. We are nearing, if we haven't hit already, the 500,000 electric vehicle bought in California mark, which is pretty exciting. But at that pace of vehicle adoption, we really anticipate there being more and more transportation electrification. We're seeing a lot of our investor-owned utilities seeing that as an opportunity for them to expand their business models. So while there is a lot of change that we need to happen to achieve our really ambitious goals, with that change comes opportunity for utilities to redefine themselves and remain viable.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned electric vehicles. Obviously, California, whether it's San Diego Gas and Electric or PG&E, SCE, and some of the other smaller municipal utilities have been really focused around electric vehicle over the last couple of years. And sitting in Detroit as I do, I see a really a new emphasis from Ford and GM and Chrysler to produce more electric vehicles. So it's exciting to hear that a growing marketplace is out there for those vehicles. As we take a step back and look at some of your work and the California Energy Commission's work, what are some of the things that you are most proud of from your time working with the Commission?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the work that we've been doing in California has been a long history. And so there's me coming in, I've been here for a small part of that. So really the successes that I've seen as I've been part of the administration, I think have been achieving some of those early goals that we set out to achieve. So to give you an example, the state's renewables portfolio standard. This was established in 2002, largely in response to California's electricity crisis, 2001 electricity crisis, where there was there was a need to diversify our electricity sources. So back when we first established that policy, California was about 11% renewable. We estimate that as of last year, it's about 32% renewable. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got some targets. The next target is 33% by 2020. So by all indicators, we're actually on pace to exceed that target early. So that's a key success, I think, in terms of meeting our goals. A second key success that I'm anticipating happening tomorrow has to do with energy efficiency. One of the things the Energy Commission is responsible for is setting energy efficiency standards for new buildings in California. It's largely one of the ways we've been able to control consumer costs on their bills is through just making sure we can do more with less electricity. As part of the next update of our code cycle, we actually are proposing to require rooftop solar on every new building built in California, with a few exceptions. And tomorrow, the California's Building Standards Commission is slated to adopt that, to consider it. And so if that happens, I think that will be a really exciting success and really shows that, particularly when it comes to rooftop solar, we went from a niche technology that was too expensive for folks all the way to now being able to actually, as a state, require it because it is going to save folks money on day one when they inhabit that new house. So another really great success story.
That is just a fascinating success story, and I wonder, as you look at rooftop solar becoming a greater part of both the retail and C&I conversation for utilities, you add that in with Senate Bill 100, Assembly Bill 32, which laid the foundation for the Climate Action Plan. What can other states learn from California as they look at policy and regulatory prescriptions to help utilities ensure that they're simultaneously serving their customers, being conscientious stewards of their environment, but are also financially viable?
Yeah, so in California, we utilize a whole variety of different policy mechanisms, and oftentimes in conjunction with each other. And we also order them in a particular way. So the arc goes a little bit like this. When we want to bring about a new technology, we first do and support through our substantial public interest research programs, research and development in order to bring nascent ideas into reality and to really develop those technologies that we need to solve some of our critical problems. Once the technology is ready, we tend to focus on incentives to really be able to expand that technology and aid in its adoption. That tends to drive costs down to where you get to a situation where it can be on cost parity with its competing technology. And that's when we transition to mandates. So rooftop solar, we were just talking about that, is a great example of that. You know, we funded research in the early days. That was followed by the California Solar Initiative back in 2006, which was a $2 billion incentive program aimed at getting rooftop solar on homes in California. Huge success. And then, as I mentioned previously, we're now in a position where solar makes sense from a cost perspective, and we're able to actually require it to save folks money on their bills.
And that's important. Ultimately, the customer is going to be a driving factor for utilities as they adopt electric vehicles, solar PV. Their behavior choices will ultimately direct utilities and other energy providers to make this an innovation. As we're talking about innovation and the ability to make an impact on communities, before you started with the California Energy Commission, you did some work around communities that were potentially negatively impacted by environmental conditions. One of the areas that Z-Prime is focusing its research and some of our events in 2019 is around the water and energy nexus. Going back to your time thinking about those vulnerable communities, how will a greater emphasis on clean energy and a better focus on delivering and conserving water impact those vulnerable communities?
Well, so I think there's sort of two issues. First, on the water energy nexus, obviously there's a huge connection between our water system in California and the electricity system. 20% of our electricity usage actually goes to moving water around, and we've had historic and will continue to have historic droughts. Climate change is only going to make that worse.
Right.
The drought issue is complicated, and also, our water usage system in California is very complicated. You're talking about, decades and decades of historic water rights issues, land use decisions that may or may not have to change in the future. But one thing that creating a cleaner energy grid and a modernized grid can bring to that system, really, I think, focuses on efficiencies. So there are a lot of technologies that not only save energy, they save water. We're seeing that on farms in particular, which is great. California's agricultural industry is a really important part of the economy. But then the other area that we're seeing it is, water is pretty important for electricity generation. Not just hydroelectric generation, but also our natural gas plants require it for cooling. As we transition away from natural gas to 100% clean grid, that will no longer be a strain on our water resources. So I think there's a lot of unique opportunities to, as we are not only addressing drought and also trying to decarbonize our grid, we do it together so we're able to pursue no regret solutions on both sides.
Courtney, thank you so much for speaking so eloquently and passionately about some of the challenges that California does face when it comes to long-term sustainability and resilience, but also sharing that really exciting vision for what's to come with a decarbonized energy future. I really appreciate this great conversation.
Great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
My pleasure.